I don't drink, and I will do all I can to keep you from drinking, and that means wine and beer. Amen, amen, amen.
The idea came about almost 4 years ago to create a sculpture in front of City Hall. As a lawyer, I was quite interested in the story of what happened. It's 100 years ago that a really small rural community changed the Constitution of the United States and said we want to have nothing to do with alcohol. And so I had contact with Matthew years ago, and he got the Prohibition topic.
This sort of definitive wedging and separating and dividing.
He immersed himself in the Ken Burns series. He read books, and he called me up one day and said, "A wedge." And I said, "A wedge? What's that look like?"
That's when I did this sort of initial sketch of what's proposed. You've got the bedrock, the body of the people, and it's being split and divided. Balanced on top of that wedge is the barrel, which holds the issue, if you will. The main point was how to try and control something that's not controllable. An issue as complex as this, that's always going to be there.
America had a drinking problem. That's a fact. It affected homes. Women were being abused. Unemployment as a result of alcoholism. Productivity was down. The question is, what are you going to do about it? In 1893, the Anti-Saloon League said, we think we can solve the problem through publicity, through the church, and through a political campaign to change the laws of the United States.
Westerville's role in this was huge. The Anti-Saloon League was aware of the strong, dry tradition of Westerville. We were this oasis of beauty and morality. We had the railroad that went through here. It was ideal for a national campaign for passage of the 18th Amendment.
Our role in Prohibition was the printing press, located immediately adjacent to the railroad, operated by 450 employees in a town of 1,700 people, and they just loaded up boxcars of material every day and shipped them out of our city. One day a week, we printed a national newspaper merely about Prohibition.
40 tons of anti-alcohol information a month. It took a while, but they did it. We really were the dry capital of the world.
Westerville, I don't know if you know, has a long tradition of Prohibition, and I think that people kind of liked the idea that it was still known as the dry capital of the world. Henry Corbin was the original guy, and I don't know if you've heard any of that. Henry tried to open a saloon here. The townspeople then blew the roof off the place. Jeez. They have pictures of it, and the roof was in front of the building on the street. He rebuilt, they bombed it again, and after that he left, he went to Columbus.
Did he open in Columbus?
No, I think he did a vegetable stand or something like that. Right. Those bombings are what prompted the temperance movement to move here. So it's two sides to the coin. I think you're kind of capturing that same kind of philosophy, that same idea.
And the next step is for me to get some face time with people involved, whether it's the parks or the stakeholders. Lots of energy that's being channeled towards me to try and translate into an object that is going to be in relationship with that community as that community evolves. I've got alcoholism in my family, and so it's an interesting tie-in that way. Having the effects of that in my life and the fear and anxiety that it brought up, this is amazing.
The League was brilliant at the more emotional cartoon. I mean, I think their best ones do pertain to alcohol in the family.
Yeah.
Here's another great one. Destroying youth in its vigor, manhood in its strength, and age in its weakness. A wrong that breaks the father's heart, bereaves the doting mother, the devil's best friend, and God's worst enemy. Very strong message. They really believed that if they got rid of the saloon, they would bring about utopia. But in reality, they brought about the rise of organized crime. And the jails were filled with people who were only there because they were selling alcohol. Many people who had been for Prohibition began to change their minds.
Delegates, give us a chance to vote on this question, please. Open the breweries and let the people have good, wholesome beer. We advocate the repeal of the 18th Amendment.
It was a social experiment that did not work. And it just flowed from there. Regardless of how you feel about alcohol, this was an important movement. I mean, we were a small community, a couple of thousand people, and yet we really changed the country. Most communities who have this kind of impact want to recognize it in some way. And I think the statue is the culmination of that.
So this thing is still a pretty heavy stone, at 10,000 pounds.
It's 100 years ago that the 18th Amendment passed Congress, and so we'll have national attention coming to Westerville as a result of the fact that this would be installed this year.
It doesn't just speak to the 18th Amendment, it speaks to what happens when you have a nation divided.
Your past is what makes you who you are, so I think it's really important that we remember that. I grew up here, so I've gotten to watch it go from a completely dry town with a couple businesses, most of them closed at 5, to flourishing.
We've been part of the Westerville community since 2008, and I think having this nod towards our history is super important. It gives the community a sense of place.
It's an easy key in to the history, and then it's a doorway to as deep as you want to go with it.